EBS TV, television reloaded.
All right, thank you for staying connected. It's Issues and Answers in the broadcasting service. I'm Josephine Eimihe. This morning we'll be looking at conflict resolution strategies on our topic this morning. Conflict is inevitable, that we know. But how can we manage conflict? What are the process of managing conflict in order to foster it from snowballing into a full-blown war like what we are having right now in Ukraine and Russia? So that's what we're going to be looking at. Apart from the world space, we still have a lot of conflicts around us. We have land grabbers, we have pockets of conflicts, even in our workspace, in the market space, whatever space we find ourselves. So how do we manage conflict so that it will not degenerate to where we start bringing our guns and machete to fight one another? That's what we'll be looking at this morning on conflict resolution strategies. Are there strategies that are needed to ensure that conflicts are maintained? What can we do to ensure that is it possible that we don't even have conflict at all? Is it possible? So this is what we're looking at this morning, and we have some gentlemen and women and a special lady with us. We'll be looking at conflict resolution strategies this morning on Issues and Answers. And we have Wisdom Ada, a public affairs analyst. Thank you this morning for coming.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Ewe Osifo is into security affairs and also a member of Edo State Drug Control Committee. I always want to say God. All right, thank you, Ewe Osifo, for coming this morning. And we have Barrister Agatha Osieke, Executive Director, Women, Youth and Children Advancement Program, and she's also Coordinator, WANEP, Nigeria. You're welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, sis. Good morning, viewers.
Okay. All right, let me go to the coordinator, WANEP. It's all about peace building also. When we talk about conflict resolution strategies, what do we mean by that?
Yeah, I will start by saying, before asking me the strategies, we need to know what is conflict.
Go ahead, please.
According to the Latin people, that word was derived from conflictus, meaning to strike. And then the Chinese, for whatever reasons, they gave it this definition: opportunity for progress. Now you now see this definition coming from two sides. This one seeing it as an opportunity to improve, for progress.
When there is conflict.
When there is conflict. And this one seeing it as two striking, two fighting, or whatever. Now, in conflict, some persons suffer and loses, some persons gains. So you now discover that when you want to look at conflict holistically, there are two dimensions to it. There are people who are there fueling the conflict so that they can make gain. That's when you want to look at it from the definition of the Chinese. And we have all seen where China is today in terms of development. And for though it's a Latin, the Latin definition to me is aligned to Africa. Because the moment you mention conflict, what comes to the mind of a black man? Destruction, fight, war. And in furtherance, you can, as well say, conflict does not just happen between two persons, two communities, or two countries. There is internal conflict. And this internal conflict or personal conflict is what has, degenerated to the full-blown conflict that we are seeing today. Because when when you look at probably your needs are not met by you or by any other person, you are at war with yourself. And what are the reasons or what are the causes of conflict? There is this psychological dimension that I just tried to explain now. There is the issue of resources. And by the time you put all these things together, it affects the whole society. And how does resources, bring about conflict? As a citizen, we expect that our leaders, our political leaders, or our religious leaders should be able to, ensure that whatever resources we have, we all benefit from it. But when you look at it, it is not so. That can bring about conflict, especially like we are having in the Niger Delta. And this too is applicable to our homes, individual homes. Because when you don't have enough resources to cater for your family, it brings about conflict. Some persons are aggrieved because they feel neglected. And if you keep on explaining these things, you now discover that, like you rightly said in your opening speech, there is no way we can totally avoid conflict. Probably I'm going too far for this moment. You now see the number of, psychological trauma patients we have on our streets today. This is as a result of conflict. We are talking about moral decadence in our society today. That is because the resources are not being managed well.
Okay, thank you for that expository thoughts on conflict. I will stay with you.
Yeah.
Now talking about the strategies, we now know conflict, the meaning and the various ways one can have conflicting thoughts and whatever. When we talk, what do we mean by the conflict resolution strategies?
Yes, when you talk about the strategies, after knowing, the kind of conflict you have, now you want to look at what can I do to douse this conflict. You can choose, to walk away. You can choose not to discuss this conflict. Probably that is your own way of, ensuring that there is peace. You try to avoidance. But we have come to understand that this strategy, it takes the strong mind, strong-willed person to adopt the strategy of avoidance. Okay. Because on the long run, you can begin to bear and swallow, but the other party does not understand that you are trying to avoid conflict. They might see it as weakness. So as human or as a community or as a country, a time will come that you will not explode. I have beared for too long.
Like what is happening in Russia and Ukraine.
And Ukraine now.
All right.
You can decide to compromise. Let me just allow this issue. Let me just allow his own take to this whole issue. All right. You understand? You are compromising, whether his own dimension is wrong or not.
Okay, thank you for your thoughts. Let me come to Wisdom Herder. I want to talk about conflict resolution and the strategies. What do we really mean by that? Your thoughts, please.
All right, thank you very much. I want to say that conflict resolution strategy, they are just strategies and ways that can be profiled by two or different warring factions in order to find solution to their challenges and then to also reach a long-standing peaceful resolution so that everybody will be satisfied. It can also involve strategies to recompense those who have actually been hurt, or those who have actually lost anything, like what is going on, like you said. I think at the end of this war that is going on in Ukraine, there will be
negotiations.
There's already ongoing negotiations, and there will be reparation even to Ukraine. All those damages will definitely be compensated. I think, so conflict here is something that we have to understand is a norm. The challenge we're having is that the way most people handle conflict actually is different from how other people handle it. And that is because people have individual differences. Your individual perception makes your approach to conflict to be very, very different. And that is why in creating strategies for conflict resolution, you must identify with those perceptions, and you must be careful not to step on those perceptions by giving wrong impression, by giving your interest, displaying your interest from the beginning, or by siding a particular party from the beginning, or maybe trying to attack. So in conflict resolution strategy, one of the strategies is to always compliment people before actually x-raying the actual issues involved. After complimenting, then you begin to guide instead of trying to be a judge, So, and I see one of the mistakes that is ongoing currently is, yes, they are using punitive measures. In conflict resolution, you don't engage in punitive measures. You don't engage in punitive measures. You guide people, and then you help people. You guide people and direct them towards how such things can be resolved, rather than engaging in punitive measures. Because the more you engage in punitive measures, the more you are escalating the tension, and the more you are escalating the crisis. And I will say why this conflict has gone to this extent is because the West kind of avoided the conflict. In conflict resolution, you don't avoid conflict. If you avoid conflict, you are preparing that conflict for a major breakdown, a major showdown. And when that showdown comes, is going to be an escalating situation, just like you have. But I appreciate the Chinese way of handling conflict. Chinese does not handle conflict the way the West handle conflict. That's the truth. The West might want to use media and so many other strategies to take up the conflict from the top, and then begin to maybe add political strategies to it, and then begin to do so many other things that will make things to linger, and then they will bring their own interest. But the Chinese go to the root of the issue. They go to the root of the issue. They want to escalate actually what actually started, or what actually caused the issue between these people and that, irrespective of maybe who is bombarding who, irrespective of how situation has escalated. They, first of all, in resolving it, they want to go to the root of the issue. So that's why they are still not placing any sanction yet. And the punitive measure, like I said, does not actually help to resolve conflict. There's something that's been going on in between Ukraine and Russia all this while, and that issue has not actually been addressed, and there was need for attention to be drawn. Not that I'm coming from the side of Russia, but I'm coming from the side of conflict resolution, which we are actually looking at. So there are strategies, like I said, even choosing a neutral location, which Russia has chosen. And I want to say something. I think the West, they are way ahead in terms of understanding the rudiments of some of these things. And they know actually. And I want to also say, some people might have misunderstood a party like Russia, and some people might have misunderstood Ukraine, but there is need to always have the complete information from both sides, the real deep truth from both sides, so that you can be able to address it properly. And that actually is also one of the strategy of conflict resolution. If you don't go into conflict resolution with proper information from both sides, you will actually mess up the activity.
All right, before I go to Mr. Ewe Osifo, let me come back to Madam Wanep. Some people will wonder what is WANEP. WANEP is West African Network for Peace. Peace building. So that is WANEP. So she's into peace matters, and she's in the right place to talk to us. What leads to conflict? What are the things that lead to conflict? Because we're talking about the strategies right now. We're talking about ensuring that there is peace and synergy in what we do. What leads to conflict?
I remember I mentioned one or two earlier. Resources. And how does resources lead to conflict? One, when there is no equitable distribution of resources, it can lead to conflict.
Okay.
And power can also lead to conflict.
Part also?
Yes. When it is not evenly, whether to use the word distributed or agreed upon, can as well lead to conflict. Lack of communication can lead to conflict. And if you look at these three I have brought out now, you now discover that they can occur to a person, to persons, to communities, to countries. When these things are not addressed the way they should be addressed, they can lead to conflict. For example, the relationship between Russia and Ukraine. There was a relationship. But at a point in time, there was misunderstanding along the line. For either you don't agree with me or I don't agree with you. And all these things boils down to probably not understanding the context in that relationship. We are talking about the world now. How did it get to that point? It was lack of communication, lack of understanding. Now look at resource distribution. And if you look in depth to this Russia and Ukraine conflict, you can't rule out the fact that there is resources somewhere that, one or two persons are not, agreeing that these things should be distributed evenly. Now, look at our own environment. There is problem all over the place. The south is burning, southeast is burning, northwest is burning, everywhere is burning. Would we leave our own issues and begin to discuss Ukraine and Russia? Because what has led to the problem of Ukraine and Russia, if time is not taken, Nigeria and one other country will begin to face this same challenge. Because we have refused to ensure that resources are distributed evenly. We have refused to see that power is distributed evenly, equitably. Because these are the things that are, fuming conflict in Nigeria today. Different tribes are talking, different sections are talking, different, political zones are talking. What can we do to ensure that we are able to handle our situation Now you and I will know the issues that are facing us. Is it not possible for some persons, some think tanks, some political analysts like my brother, you understand, to come up with a roadmap to say this and this and this and this we must do to ensure that we achieve this and this and this result? In as much as we cannot rule out the fact that there must be conflict, but the conflict should be minimal, that we can be that they can be managed.
All right, thank you for your thoughts. Ms. Iwe, what do you think are the causes of conflict? What leads to conflict from your perspective?
From creation, conflict has been there. I tell people, man is a remedial creation. When God created, there was conflict. Man has to come in to become a remedy. And if you still look at the scripture a little bit, my brother in the scripture, Job said, a man born of few days is full of trouble. Conflict said is trouble. Trouble everywhere. I thank God my dad has brought us back home so that we can leave Ukraine and
Russia
love can deal with the matter.
But it's affecting us in one way or the other.
Because, you see, conflict is trouble in itself. It's here with man. We should be able to learn how to solve it. And we can there is no conflict that cannot be managed. It's just that sometimes some people want to claim to be Oga. Because when it comes to issue of conflict, and you want to really resolve conflict, leave matter of who is senior, who is not senior. Let us look for how will it benefit the greater population, the greater majority of our people, than looking for who is senior. Like if you are looking at what we are seeing here now, majority of the conflict we have here that have not been resolved, that is about to blow, a lot of things have to do with communication. There is no communication. You just come grab my land, and you think I will not react. You just come drive me away from my farm and ask a cow to take over my farm, and you think we can continue to do that. One day you see reaction from somewhere. So conflict has come to stay with us. But what I'm saying that it is manageable. Our adage say the tongue and the teeth, they are the closest friends. They still fight and they remain in the same mouth. That is how conflict. Nobody can say there should be no conflict. I'm not here to say there should be no conflict, but there will be conflict, but it should be resolved, and it can be resolved if only we are ready to resolve it. Sometimes we don't begin to think about the things of the mind. You want to resolve conflict, and you just believe that, yeah, before we start, 95% is my own, let us leave the 5% in the other group. It's not going to happen. When it comes to issue of conflict resolution, since we have agreed that it is there, from a session from the beginning, you can think about 50-50 before you can continue to look at this way and the other way. Conflict is a thing that has come to stay with us, and it can be resolved. In the home, father and mother, there used to be conflict, disagreement. If you refuse to talk, you are only looking for the day the conflict will become bigger. If you refuse to talk, you need to say what you just bottle it today, you bottle it tomorrow, you bottle it the next day. One day your body cannot take it again. Your heart it will just explode, and you now begin to think how this thing has become. But you have been resolving it little by little. You discover that if you just go the way they are coming, it is something we call it will come to pass, or it has come to pass. It will come. Sit down. Don't run away. Attend to it. Sometimes you resolve your personal conflict with yourself. You resolve conflict with you and your spouse, and a third party could be involved when necessary. And when it is at the level of escalation that the third party has to be involved. But at that level of just coming up, we can sit down, you tell me your side, I tell you your side. We just talk about River State, I think Imo State, I have been conflict in their border already. And I think they are in court because of some oil well. That's also conflict. So we're looking at the other side of resource control. And, education is a very good thing in life. When people are educated, they begin to think differently. Their mind will be lighter, be able to think. You don't just stand, we are the owner of the soil, son of the soil. And this computer age, digital age, every one of us, we are in Nigeria. All of us are son of the soil. Even I don't want to be son of the river. All of us, we are here in Nigeria. Nigeria belongs to all of us.
So my son of the river, anyway. All right, thank you. Let me come to Wisdom Header. There are always signs for you see the signs, but most of us just do away with the signs. What are the signs can one look at?
Well, there are so many signs. There are so many reasons that can degenerate into conflict. You know, actually, like they have said, disputes are some of those causes. Sometimes land disputes, boundary disputes. Sometimes it could be someone's personal interest above every other person's interest. You know, sometimes it could be way of ideas, way of ideologies that might not be embraced by every other person, which one particular party might be very much, accustomed with, and then he wants to override it on every other person. So there are various signs and traces, like some of these lack of inequality, lack of proper distribution of whatever is supposed to go to everyone, and these are many of the signs. Like some challenges we're having in the country now. I think yesterday there was students were rioting, and the minister was there to attend to them, and someone asked a question to the minister, and he got angry and he left. So these are some of the lack of understanding of the strategies in resolving the conflict. I think at that level, is either the minister is going to be ready to receive anything, or he sends his delegation who will be able to stand between him and then the student union, so that the challenge of whatever altercation that might be coming up from these young guys might not be seriously affecting himself, his personality. But he left, and then that was actually how the whole thing was stalled. So till now, students have not actually been attended to, and then we don't know what might become of them. We don't know if they are going to carry out another escalated riot and protest, and then we don't know if it will degenerate into something else. So when issues like these are not being attended to, or you treat truth, you see something that is pure white, and you want to give various definitions about it at the end of the day to make people believe that it's black, at the end you have actually created a room for conflict. And then there are ways of settlement which I have seen in Nigeria. Actually, the way people, communities are being settled, many times the settlement ends with a particular set of people. It doesn't go down to the grassroots. The other people do not know. It did not start, it started from there before it degenerated into what you have now as a National Assembly, overhead costs, maintenance allowance, and all the rest of them, constituency project allowance, and so on. So all these things, when somebody is representing you, but finally goes there to represent himself
And his family,
it will finally degenerate into conflict at the grassroots. People who you are supposed to be representing, they will come back and they will tell you that this person has really not represented us well, and they will give you a lot of things. And then when you are coming back to be re-elected by force, you will definitely jam a lot of conflicts, and that is actually so. There are so many traces and different ways, like he said in the Bible. There are so many insurrections. People had to go against a rule, and particularly the law that was existing. Where there is no law and order, where there is no rule guiding people's activity, definitely people will introduce their own patterns. So
thank you so much for that. Madam Wanep, you're into peace building. I asked him the question. There are some signs, that this thing will also bring a lot of problems to it. So what are the things one can look at for, watch out for, so that it will not result to that place, to that position when we have conflicts?
In peace building, we call it early warnings.
Okay.
There are signs you see, and as a peace builder, you now begin to think, if this thing or this thing is not addressed immediately, it could escalate. I always like using Nigeria. I'm in Nigeria. What we are seeing in the country today, the high level of poverty that we are seeing today would result to something terrible tomorrow if not addressed. We are beginning to see the signs everywhere. We are beginning to see what our youths are doing now.
Killings.
Nobody moves unconsciously anymore. As you move, you are very conscious of the person behind you, the person by your right, the person by your left. It's going to that level. And these are early warnings that were neglected years back. They are all, they have escalated, waiting for when the time bomb will explode. We all saw what happened during the EndSARS. The warnings were there. But the government, they just gave a deaf ear. And the Minister for Information will come and tell stories of what was never there until that EndSARS came up. And if you look at the number of youths that took part in that EndSARS, I would say maybe about 10% of the youths of this nation. Because if about 50% of Nigerian youths came out for that EndSARS, I don't think we'll be seated here. So early warnings, I mentioned earlier about the high number of mad people on our streets. It's something that came from somewhere sometime, affecting them now. So these ritual killings of 18 that is happening now, they are now beginning to discuss it in the upper chambers. But is that the way they should go about it? Because if we want to be sincere to ourselves, we should know the root cause of these things. Where you have 5 full-blown men, graduates in a family, no job, what do you want them to do? We are talking about our young girls going into prostitution, doing this, doing that. In as much as we are not applauding them, but something led to that.
So we should watch out for those signs.
We should watch out for every single sign we see. Even in our homes. We are talking to parents. A child, that you used to know that has this good behavior, and suddenly you are seeing this child changing somehow. It's your duty as a mother, as a father, to investigate. Neglecting early warnings. I was in one of the police stations about 2 weeks. And the pain I had was, it was a teacher or a headmistress that brought this case to the station. My question was to the father of that little girl now. If you are a good father, you would have noticed this thing and not the headmistress or teacher in the school. And that is, the kind of attitude and character we have in our nation, neglecting early warnings. Because if the father had noticed that character, he would have been able to nip it at the bud.
All right, thank you for that. We do have a process of resolving conflict even in our old days before we have this scientific process. So, Ms. Tahewe Osifo, how can conflicts, what are the steps to take in resolving conflicts?
Like I mentioned earlier, it's difficult to keep quiet. It's also difficult to bottle it up. It will escalate and cause greater problems. I think it will let us start from home. As Madam has said, let us be very, very observant. For example, if your spouse used to get up in the morning and say good morning, suddenly stop breathing, you're supposed to find out what happened. Why is it happening like this? Don't just keep quiet and walk away. No. The early warning, in fact, we are even gone beyond early warning now. I think we are in the second or third warning. killings everywhere, robbery. It's so much that, and they look at, and you see our people coming up to tell us lies. I know the social media blow a lot of things, but you see how people, something happen, crow, you witness, you are part of it. The next thing you hear or see in the television is somebody just telling you that it didn't happen, or telling you something else. You just look at Nigerians that are very, very intelligent and say we are Mugu. Our people are very, very intelligent. They understand. Even when you blink eye, they understand. And you are not telling them something else. Yeah, I think one of the greatest things we are facing is that mediocres are really ruling. And every other person, whether you're intelligent, you are a professor, you are working under the big foot of mediocres. So we
but it's your opinion anyway, it's not the opinion of others. So we should get that clear.
We thank God. That is my opinion. I think like that. We thank God. So when there is conflict, I think even though the government had put in place a system, but this system are they really working? How many days, how many months does it take to bring a matter to the court and to postpone and adjournment? That's what you see. Problems everywhere. So what we do, the method that our people observe or we're using, we still have our traditional institutions. It's easier. If you want to take a matter, for example, in my community, you want to take a matter between a husband and wife to court, which is common. You know, if a husband and a wife, they take their matter to court in Nigeria, they become enemy for life. But in the Western world, you are just trying to solve it. So you just have to look for a solution. There was, when I was in the school as a younger person, there was a little case that said Salmon versus Salmon. Papa and mama, father and parents, they just took themselves to court to resolve certain matter concerning their conflict. No house, we are just looking for the best way, but here, when matter comes out like that to resolve, it becomes enmity. Enmity is created. What happens is that when there is a matter from home, you take it to the traditional institution that is your place. For example, if I take my village, for example, if you have land issues, you bring it to the authority. They set to sit down, send people there to go and look at it.
Not compromise with you.
No.
Because some of them are biased.
Okay, I think Eda mentioned that some people, they already have vested interest somewhere. And what I mentioned when I started, if you are going to be in that institution of conflict resolution, you set your mind, just free your mind. There's nothing like, I like this side, I didn't like this side.
I'll come to you. Yeah. Are there skills required for conflict resolution?
Yes.
Please go ahead and tell us.
There are skills. Then if you want to delve into conflict resolution, first of all, you must have the skill of understanding the issue. You must be able to understand the issues. You must not be biased. You must have that ability of not being biased. You must not be...
That means you must be neutral.
Yes, you have to be neutral. And you must not be carried away by the story, the story, around the conflict. You must not align yourself to any of the parties. You must have this empathy, okay? And you must have a sound, like I said earlier, communication skills. And when you are listening to the two parties, you must ensure that you understand their language. When I say language, not Yoruba, not Igbo, understand them from the angle they are coming from. And you must be able to give a fair judgment. You understand? Because your aim is to ensure that at the end of that resolution, no party will be pointing finger at each other. And at the end, they will go home happy. So it should be a win-win thing. You understand? You must have this ability to ensure that both parties, even the person that will be on the wrong side at the end of the day, the person will still leave that place happy. So it takes a lot of skills to ensure that you two, that happens to be the mediator, you go back home having a good night rest. Because if at the end of the day, any of these skills never played out, there's no way you can go home happy yourself. So as a mediator, you must acquire these skills. There are institutions that can build your capacity to ensure that you have these skills. And there is nothing good as when both parties sees you on the street tomorrow, they say, good morning, sir, good morning, ma.
Wow.
Than not that yeye person. If you see judgment,
It turns it upside
exactly.
down.
So you must ensure you have these skills.
All right, thank you so much. That means conflict resolution is not for mediocres.
No.
It's for people with sound mind. Wisdom Elder, I believe in as much we want to resolve conflicts, there are some strategies, best strategies in resolving it. So what are the best strategies or strategy one can use in resolving this issue, apart from what she just
All right, yes, I have to say this. Our society here, we have to improve on strategies of conflict resolution. We have to improve on building structures, building committees, building a lot of strategies in our neighborhoods, the communities, and so on. Take for example, if you go around, you hardly see a feedback mechanism in the States. All right, so there is no, I don't know how people can send information back to the government, the governor, directly. I'm not talking of passing through all the bureaucracies. I'm talking of a toll-free line or the use of chatbot. Okay. Now, and there's something I must commend as well. I think some days back I've always gone to that part of Edo State, Ewotubu, to see the road. But recently I went there and I saw a new development going on there on the road. So I must commend that, because these are strategies. If, like when the local government system died in some states, a lot of strategies of conflict resolution died. That's the truth. When you don't have local government areas existing, when governors scrapped them and then they fixed just going there for salaries, a lot of things were gone. So these are people who can send information back to the center. So there must be a proper information dissemination to the center, and there must be, in cases of, let's say there's maybe infighting, family challenge, there must be a particular section that can handle it, different from the section that can handle maybe an outbreak of violence within an area, and so on and so forth. Some of our police and all the rest of them, all these structures that are put in place, they should have several departments, and they should have their advertorials set out so that people can easily communicate through them and then get all these conflicts resolved at the beginning before it escalates. So if these things are not in place, if there's no proper feedback, and if there's no use of all these current and contemporary measures, both in the villages to send information. I always hear them calling our radio station here, maybe something is happening in this particular community and so on. Now, if it's not to radio station, can that call come to the government? Can that call come to the police? And then can there be an instant approach that will be given to that particular challenge? So the way of communication, first of all, must be approached, and institutions and structures must be set up. And then traditional rulers as well must be encouraged. They must be encouraged, and they must come for some strategic conflict resolution training, especially the contemporary aspect. These traditional rulers are also part of agencies.
Even church religious leaders also.
Religious leaders, yes. So these people must come in, and then everyone must at least be part of making sure that some conflicts are resolved. There must not be this display of partiality. I've been into political activity whereby some people went to represent a given group of people. At the end of the day, they got what they wanted, but they came back and they told the people another thing, and that's what we keep hearing. So a lot of all these things can be addressed if we have proper way of passing information, because this is the age of information
All right, just briefly, just second, you want to say something?
Yes, in addition to what he just said, at times I wonder, to become a leader, what is, at the back of their mind? I'm talking about leaders, both religious leaders and traditional leaders. At times, there are occasions where we had organized training for them on conflict resolution. And some of them will ask us, what are we going to gain at the end of? So you now see, they don't look beyond what they are going to gain.
Nigerian factor.
You understand? So I am thinking mindset has a lot of role to play in this whole
Orientation.
exercise.
All right.
And that is why the training should go beyond just the religious leaders. Information, strategies of passing information should go to everybody.
All right, thank
like what
you.
we have in the West.
Okay, thank you so much for looking at conflict resolution strategies. And like what Madam Agatha said, she said we should not concentrate on Ukraine and Russia. In as much the war will affect us in one way or the other, we should concentrate on what is going on around us, and we should nip every conflict at the bud. Barrister Agatha Osieke, Executive Director, Women, Youth, Children Advancement Program, and also coordinator of WANEP, West African Network for Peace Building. Thank you, ma'am, for coming.
Thank
We
you so
appreciate
much.
your thoughts. Wisdom Eda, a public affairs analyst. Thank you also for your
Thank you.
thoughts.
I appreciate it.
Okay, well, C4, also a public commentator and member Edo State Drug Control Committee. Thank you once again
I'm so grateful.
for your thought. That's the show this morning on Issues and Answer. My name remains Josephine Eyimihe. Do have a good day ahead. Thank you.
EBS